My name is Notomi. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. Now, they've already introduced that Western ancient philosophy or Greek philosophy is my specialty, but I also obtained a degree in classical philosophy from the Faculty of Classics at Cambridge. Therefore, I have been doing my research in two different areas. More recently, my research has also involved world philosophy. My fields of research are the foundation for the talk I'd like to give today. What is the purpose of this lecture? This lecture is attended by students from all fields of the University of Tokyo, and this is a very valuable opportunity. My time is limited, but I would like to give you the essence of philosophy as easily and comprehensibly as possible. This topic may not be directly related to green transformation. However, I hope that you will be able to incorporate philosophy into your lives and link it with GX. Now, many of you may or may not have attended a philosophy course in liberal arts. But philosophy actually becomes more important in specialized research. Therefore, as researchers and students in undergraduate and graduate courses, I hope that you will make the best use of this knowledge. Now I would like to give you an intro to the intro of philosophy. Now, people ask whether philosophy is useful for certain purposes or how it can be used. That is not the applicable question. Philosophy is not a tool, but it is the knowledge or wisdom to use such tools. Therefore, whether philosophy is useful or not is a strange question. Now, I hope that you'll be able to get a feel for what philosophy is. Philosophy deals with various different topics, from classic topics to contemporary and modern issues. But I will not talk on any specific topics. Rather, I would like to present to you the very basics of what philosophy is. So the specific topic of what is philosophy is what I will be presenting to you today. Now, what will we do today? Here is the content of the lecture. I'm still on the introductory part. Some of you may not have any idea about what philosophy is. So I will talk about what is philosophy as a preliminary conversation. And then the core concepts are topics 3, 4, and 5. There are some core topics or themes or very basics of basics covered by philosophy. I'll talk about 3 concepts. One is eternity, another is nothing, and the third is the soul. These are the 3 concepts that I'd like to refer to within my limited time. But first, what is philosophy? Which is a very standard, typical question. I'm sure you're wondering what it is. But strangely, what is philosophy is a point that's been discussed within the study of philosophy, and for more than 2,000 years, people have been discussing the nature of philosophy. Many people have different ideas, but we have not had any definitive answers or a prospect of any resolution. It's strange because you're discussing philosophy, but the whole time you have to think about what philosophy even is. In Greek mythology, you may have seen an image of an Ouroboros. It's the serpent that eats its own tail and goes in circles. So you have to consider philosophy as you engage in philosophy. It may sound strange, but today I'd like to tell you why that happens. You might view this as pointless. Maybe we should instead think about more concrete issues or come up with some kind of answers. But in many cases, we cannot do that. Actually, this is a world where you cannot really do that. That is philosophy. Therefore, it's kind of strange. But philosophy is to really think about what philosophy is all about. And you then present as much of what you've thought up of as possible. And let me give you some basic terminology of philosophy. When you say philosophy, what is this English term, philosophy? I specialized in ancient Greece, and that term was created maybe in 6 BC. And that was philosophia. Philo means love, and sophia means wisdom. So it is really about loving wisdom. The love for wisdom. And now it is called philosophy in French and English, and when Japan opened its borders in the 19th century. Nishi Amane, who is a thinker, came up with the translation 哲学. And today this is used also in Korea and China. So it seems like this philosophy is a Western thing. But recently I wrote this book of world philosophy, which will be published next January. I'm currently working on this. I've written about world, global philosophy. It is not about only Western things. It also covers the other parts of the world, including Japan, India, Africa, and Latin America. This is something that covers the whole globe. But today, we will mainly talk about Western philosophy. That is because I specialized in Western philosophy. Of course, if you are interested in them, you can have a peek into the philosophy of other regions. So I said that philosophy is about love of wisdom, so it is an endless pursuit. It is not like you achieve something and that is it. And when you say wisdom, it sounds like trying to become smarter or something, but that is not the case. The reason you pursue wisdom is, it is really about how to live well and live more happily, what to practice as much as possible. And this is something we will talk about today. And that really leads to the reflection of our own being. So this is the last part of my introduction. Actually, there is more. So as I said, what is philosophy? This question is endless. But I think it is easier to maybe consider what is not philosophy. So when you go to bookstores or libraries, maybe you'll find a corner where there are a lot of philosophy resources, but it is nothing that will solve your issues. Philosophy is not really about solving your issues. Of course, it could help you face up to issues, or it may give you an opportunity to think deeply about your issues, but it is not something that will give you a quick answer. Nor will a teacher of philosophy be able to give you an answer. People have been thinking about this for 2,000 years, 3,000 years, and there has been no definitive answer. And you need to endure that process when it comes to philosophy. Another clear example of what philosophy is not is that it is not a discipline or science. For example, you may specialize in a certain field, but it is different from that. And I will talk about how they are different with examples. I can give you two examples. I think there are several disciplines that look closely at humanity. For example, medicine. Medicine deals with humans, especially in terms of health and disease. To look at the mechanisms of the body and look at humans from that angle and to study humans in detail. But it's not just about that. For example, economics is also about the study of humans. In the case of economics, it's not looking from the angle of health. It's looking from the angle of economic activity, or the market, or activities used to purchase or sell something. So they try to analyze human activities from those perspectives. So when it comes to the disciplines, usually, they look at humans from certain dimensions or angles. But for philosophy, that's not the case. So what is it then? That's what I will soon explain. Does philosophy encompass everything? Is it a comprehensive knowledge or inclusive knowledge? No, that expectation is excessive. Because there is no such thing as comprehensive or inclusive knowledge. Philosophy is a pursuit, a quest you think about and you try to pursue, but there's no simple answer. And it is a basic fundamental. It is not a basic science. It has an element of the fundamental, but philosophy is not even an academic discipline. Now, when we talk about knowledge, you may think of knowledge as information or data, but that is not the case. The knowledge in philosophy is my being of knowing or not knowing. And the fact that I know or I live without knowing, I live knowing a certain data. Considering myself in such a state of being is the philosophy. And knowing philosophy is not going to make you smart. And people will say that philosophy is the practice of the art of living, or ars vivendi, which is an ancient concept. Philosophy is to handle how we live. And the second point is, what is philosophy? I said that there's no definition and we cannot define. But there's one point where I think I can say this. What does philosophy deal with? Everything. All things. And philosophy is not limited to any part of something. It is not limited to health or disease or economic activities. It handles all things. But then what is all? That is all things in this world. There is a cup in front of me, a university where we study, the earth, the universe. It is all things, and it is all things that are present today. Everything that has existed in the past, that will exist in the future, that's everything. So everything is included in the world. Is the world everything? Is there anything outside of the world? And with everything included, I'm sure you're thinking about this, I am included in everything. Now what about I, myself, that thinks of the world? And the word I that I think about is also included in all? And the word all is included in all. And the thought of all this is included in all. Now what is all? Thinking that is also included in all. Therefore, philosophy is to deal with everything without any limitations, with no particular perspectives. Everything. All means it can cover very broadly and include everything and anything. So that's everything. It should be complete. It should complete when you say all, but every time you say it's complete, we are transcending ourselves. So philosophy is the practice of transcending itself, because when we say, that's all, it transcends itself. Now, why is philosophy not an academic discipline? Well, academic disciplines have limitations, restrictions of the framework you have to study within. Therefore, you have your respective research discipline, and within the discipline, from one angle, you look very closely at the world. But when you take away the framework, you have to think about what you do, and that means you have to do everything outside of the framework. Then you have to think, what is it that you do? You think about it even further. That is the practice of philosophy. So far I've given you the introduction of the introduction. Now I will talk about the specifics, because so far we've been talking about the areas that will not give you any concrete ideas. Therefore, now I'd like to talk about some concepts. Several words that you may not really give much thought in your daily life. To explain to you what we do with philosophy with those particular concepts. As my ideas, I have selected 3 words, and it is just by chance that I selected these 3. But many philosophers often choose these words. So those are the 3 very fundamental concepts and principles. And these are interrelated with each other, but they are separate words. So first I will talk about eternity. So we live in the world, that's what I said. So who are we? What does it mean that we live? And philosophers use the word world. And there's Japan, there's the United States or China. I'm not talking about that kind of world. We're talking about this Earth, including the universe and this world. So I'm talking about everything. When I say world, I mean that's what philosophers mean, and including the past, present, and future as well. That's what we mean by world as philosophers. So the world that we live in, what is it? Please think about this for a while. There's a cup, a table, the studio, and myself. Basically, there's time and space. It exists within time and space. Because it's within time and space, it changes. So it's within time in the space. It seems like this object is not really changing, but actually, it's changing in time, and it could change its position. It's in motion, and its contents could also change. So the world we live in will change in motion, in time. So that's what all consists of. And Aristotle, who is a Greek philosopher, called this the world of nature. So you know, it changes in motion and time, and that's what he called nature. And so the world of nature, we can probably understand what this is. And this is how they came up with natural science. And then the question is, if we can analyze and elucidate everything in this world as it changes in time, can we understand this world? That's not really the case. So nature within time and space, there could be something that goes beyond that. And Aristotle called this metaphysics. And he tried to explore this question within this metaphysics. And this is the word that you find in textbooks. So physics is to study, to explore the world of nature. But this metaphysics is the study that goes beyond it. That goes beyond time and space, the world that does not have the changes in motion. So the world of nature, we believe this is something that fundamentally supports the world of nature. And from ancient times, medieval times to the present philosophers, throughout all different eras, they have considered this important theme. And if you go back to where we are now in this world, when we talk about sustainability, we often talk about SDGs. And I'm sure many of you are doing this research as well. So the environment we're in is in a very urgent situation. There's climate change, abnormal weather, and we're not sure how long we can sustain this. 30 years, 50 years, 100 years? 100 years from now, no one in this room is going to be alive. Is it 1,000 years or 10,000 years? So we live in this limited time. I mean, 10 years from now, it might be a very urgent matter. On the other hand, we exist in this timeline, but simultaneously we have to consider what this timeline even is. Well, 13.8 billion years have passed since the Big Bang, when the universe was born. So that's when the time was created. So what was before that, or what is after that? And 3.5 to 4 billion years have passed since life was born. And about 200,000 years have passed since humanity was born. Maybe you can imagine things from this kind of timeline. And then, when you think about the future, if 200,000 years have passed since humanity was born, maybe 200,000 years from now, humans will be extinct. Or maybe the Earth may not exist. Maybe, 10 billion years from now. Maybe the universe also does not exist. So then we have to think about what sustaining means. And maybe we are thinking about time from the perspective that transcends time. But of course, not everything goes. We need to think about the present. The present moment within our time frame. What is the present? And what does it mean to be here right now? And we can extend this to an unimaginably long span. And then, what is happening at this moment? We need to have both perspectives. This is a very good aspect of philosophy. So that was one thing I wanted to tell you. Now I would like to consider the word eternity. Because, as I said, the world we live in is within the time and space. But let's focus on time. Time encompasses all, and everything moves within it as it changes. However, we know the world that is not related to time. For example, mathematics. 2 + 2 = 4, 2 by 5 is 10. It's got nothing to do with time. It's not the case that on 2023, December 26th, the answer is 10, but it's 15 the day after that. It's got nothing to do with time. The same goes for logic or with various laws. The space started 13.8 billion years ago. It may exceed time, so we live within time. However, humans already transcend time as we give thoughts. That's how we are related to time. Therefore, the horizon beyond time in philosophy is called eternity. Eternal, or eternity in English. And the meaning of the word is different from your daily use, because whenever we talk about eternal, eternity, you may think of a long time. But that is all the concept within time. So even lasting or permanent, permanent may be the word that's the meaning of eternal eternity, from the past into the future. It may seem long, but it's still a discussion over time. But eternity within the concept of philosophy is not time. It transcends time. According to Aristotle, it is metaphysics. It is the world that transcends nature. And mathematics may be closer to the concept of eternity, but then what is time? As I said, as we use the word eternity and apply that to the concept of time and its existence, that's what my research topic is about. Plato thought about this, and one of his works in later years is this discussion of universe, Timaeus, and he defines time. And at a time, it may not sound straight, but how he defined the time is the image of eternity. As a definition, time is the image of eternity according to Plato's definition. It may be difficult to understand. I'm not saying it's difficult because you may be unable to comprehend it. This is a very difficult concept to start with. Let me explain, and please focus on the word image. And Plato did intentionally use the word image, because images are in comparison with the original. An artist will look at a model and draw or take a photograph. And that is the relationship with the original and image, or model and image. And here on the slide it says model versus image equals eternity and time. This is an analogy Plato used that we should apply. So let's do an exercise. Let's say my image, my face, the image of the studio must be on the screen, and I'm speaking and you're listening to my voice, and you hear me move on the screen as an image. Now on the screen you see the image of myself. It may seem realistic, however it is actually two-dimensional, just a form of light. With some colors, and I'm moving about. So in the room, I'm sitting next to Professor Okoshi, but I'm a real person. I'm not virtual. I exist in a 3D reality. Not just three-dimensional, but I have my blood flowing inside me, my brain moving, and I'm moving in reality. But what you're looking at is only what is me on the screen. I seem to be different from how people see me in the studio when looking at my image on the screen. But you imagine myself as a live human being in 3 dimensions. That means that you are using your imaginations to perceive me beyond the two-dimensional plane. And you recognize myself as a three-dimensional person while you're only looking at me on a screen. You have the imagination. So that's what you should do now. You live in the world of time, and we only know of time or what exists within time and in front of you. Everything changes in time, and that's the image that Plato talks about. This is the two-dimensional image that you're looking at. But if you go to a higher dimension, if you were to imagine what it is at a higher dimension, that will probably be beyond time, and that is eternity. In other words, I am here. I'm the live person, Notomi, and myself is taken as a snapshot on the screen. But when you have eternity and you make it extend, it becomes an eternity. So it's maybe a relationship between a point and a line. So that's eternity. Eternity is not everlasting. It is not permanent. Eternity is where everything exists at a time now. But I shouldn't even use the word now. So the reason I talk about this is because the time that we live in, if you live just within time, you cannot really understand this, because there's eternity and we are only part of that. We are only part of the image. And then you'll understand what kind of world we're living in. So when you do this, this concept of eternity, and we live in the world of time that is constrained in a very short period of time, this is something that we're trying to think about. That is one of the interesting parts of philosophy. So when you do philosophy, the word eternity will come up many times. And, people discuss about eternity. For example, the modern philosopher Spinoza. That's one of the famous philosophers. He talks about an eternal viewpoint from which we think about time. So he thinks from the perspective of God, because God does not have time. So he considered our world of time from the perspective of God. And he said that is what philosophy is about. So this is one kind of thought experiment. Actually, we're not able to really understand what eternity is, because when we're in the world of 2D, we're not able to really go beyond 3D. Same thing. So we're trying to consider or think about or imagine what is beyond our dimension. And we're trying to maybe imagine to transcend ourselves by analogy. The next concept is actually more difficult, but maybe something that you're familiar with. Nothing. So philosophy deals with everything. All things when you say everything. Is it really everything? And then you come up with this question. So when you say all, there's a cup, a room that I'm in, and myself. Basically, we consider this as being. So there is a cup here, and I'm here in this room. So they are beings. So the question of being this is called ontology in philosophy. So you might be surprised that there is such a subdivision or subdiscipline of philosophy as ontology. So what does it mean to be? It's very difficult to understand because it's very abstract. But if you step back to think about what Greek philosophers thought about being, actually, this applies to Japanese as well, if you were to explain it in Japanese. So when you say to be, we say this is a cup, this is a white thing. It says this is white in English, and this is on the table. So there's this term, to be or being. Be something or being something, that's how we see it. So when we try to understand this world with words, we use this be or be in something. And most languages, including ancient Greek, English, Japanese, Chinese, have these kinds of phrases. And we try to grasp from this perspective, what does it mean to be or be in something? So the word be is used in combination with is not. For example, there's some water in this cup, so I drink this water, then there's no more water then. So there is water now in the cup, but now 5 minutes after I drink it, there's no more water. So be and not be is like a combination. So be in something and not be in something is in combination. When you say it, it's very difficult to understand. Be in or be something, it has to be in contrast to is not something or is not in something. For example, if there's a cup now, it means there was no cup a week ago, so it's always in combination. So you have to understand that there is and there is not. Now can we understand? Recognize what is and is not. You continue to negate, the cup is not a human, or the cup is not red, and you keep on doing that practice. But you say this is not a cup, this is not white, and if you add this negation, it is not this, it is not that. Then eventually you may only be able to say it is not for everything. That means ultimately there is something that can be only described with nothing. And that means no, not. Then that's nothing. But what does it mean that that something is nothing? There is something and nothing is, always comes in a pair. But if you only focus on nothing, or if you end up with nothing, what is it? If there is, then you can understand what that is, because that is a cup that is white. But what is nothing? It is not a cup, it is not human, it is not this or that. Eventually, what happens? That is something we can never understand, we can never describe, we cannot describe in words and thought. That's nothing. And my words, I know they're strange because nothing cannot be understood by words. It cannot be thought, it cannot be talked about. And I said that with words. But you should not be able to do that because it's contradictory to what I said. It cannot be understood. I think of nothing. I think of what nothing is, but as soon as I think of nothing, it is something in my thoughts. It is not to be nothing. In other words, nothing is always beyond whatever we think, and that can only be described as what is not. As the moment I say nothing, I say nothing. But nothing is something that should not be said. It's unthinkable, unspeakable. So the moment I say nothing is this and that, I mean the moment I say it is. So it is no longer nothing. And having to consider what is beyond that is a difficult and interesting part of philosophy. You do not limit yourself within a certain range or limit. You always have to think of what is beyond, what transcends your thought. I said all, but the moment you say all, it is not everything, because there must be nothing or the nothingness beyond. But the moment you say nothingness, it comes into existence, and then it's no longer nothing. Well, it's really a thought experiment for you. You must think of many things that you never thought about. But lastly, I'd like to talk about something that is even closer to you. The soul is the last topic I'd like to talk about. Philosophy is to cover, to explore various concepts using words to deal with what is in the world. It could be mathematics, or in the natural science, or in law or economics. We all study using concepts, and we have to consider using concepts, because by using certain concepts we can define the world, or what we do with it, more clearly. Using words or concepts, there are some worlds that become visible. And concepts are very important. If you don't use the word, you may not be able to define or describe the world. That is, not to use the existing words. But in philosophy, you have to use your own words to describe what it is, what that is. And philosophy, the concept of philosophy, is oftentimes developed by someone else already. But which concept is to be used in order to describe the world in what way? That's what philosophers do, and that's your skill. And as for my personal experiences, well, the term soul I use in my discussion. I try to use the word soul in my discussion and dialogue. It's psyche in Greek. This is the other original word for psychology. In Latin, it's anima. In Japanese, it's the tamashi, and Chinese uses the same characters. And using the word soul to look into the world, I believe, is very important. That is why I try to use the word soul for discussions. And this is not the word that you use in your everyday conversation. For example, when you talk about natural science or social science, you've probably never seen the word soul. You'll probably not find this in works of those sciences. If you do find it, please let me know, because you usually don't find it in physics, for example. So in natural or social sciences, it's not used. And it's actually not used in philosophy. It was used throughout history up to the modern era. But in the contemporary field of philosophy, it's not really used. So the current philosophers or researchers are not using the word soul. So I'm actually kind of going against this trend. But in the world of religion or literature, it is actually used. It's actually used in various cultural phenomena. In certain fields, it is used, but in certain areas or fields, it is actually excluded. It's kind of strange because this term soul is very alluring. But it's actually dangerous as well. For example, if you talk about the soul, some people think of the occult or spiritual. Of course, I'm not saying the occult is all bad, but people sometimes think it's a bit otherworldly. So I think there's a tendency to avoid using the word soul. And when I use the word soul in my lectures of philosophy, sometimes the students might come up with this question. You know, how heavy do you think the soul is after we die? And it's like, you know, asking the question, what is the weight of justice? But when you think about, you know, soul, sometimes people think it's like 5 grams or something, but that's not what I'm saying. It's about this concept. But sometimes the conversation could be very misleading, and sometimes it could be very deep. We need to be careful when we use the word soul. So let's see. We live in this contemporary world. I want to use this word, soul, in a very correct way. And that's why I discuss a lot about soul. And it's very close to you and I. And, you know, we're not able to actually, you know, this is just a way you call people, so you're not able to generalize. Then there's also ego or consciousness in modern philosophy. I'm trying not to use these words and instead use the word soul. And also in Western modern philosophy, they use words like subject and agent. And furthermore, in modern philosophy, they use the word mind. I'm sure you might be more familiar with this word, mind. But I believe you're not able to really discuss everything with the word mind. That's why I kind of insist on using the word soul. And let me explain why this is the case. So when I talk about the word soul, soul is about myself and you. And it's equal. Raw soul is a kind of encounter. That's the kind of situation that I want to use where it's soul. So I'm speaking before you and I have my body. I'm 50 plus years old. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying that my soul is speaking to you. And each of you have your own name. You're all unique. But you have your own soul as well. And my soul is speaking to each of you who are also souls. And your soul is encountering my soul. I'm not being spiritual. This is actually something that is happening every day. And these souls are all equal, completely equal. That is what I want to say. And the reason I use the word soul is because when you say ego, it's like I'm seeing the world for myself and all of you are someone else. And sometimes, people start saying that objects and other people are not different. In modern philosophy, actually, it's not the case because I'm speaking. I don't look at you and objects as the same thing because I believe you are more of a soul. So that is one of the reasons why I speak using the word soul, which is sort of being removed from modern philosophy. But I use it because I think it helps us live a richer life. And the souls do change by meeting, encountering somebody, or by studying, or having experiences. The way I live changes, transforms. It doesn't mean my intellect changes or my physical form changes, but my soul changes as a result. So that's a transformation of the soul, or how we change towards being better. You change yourself to become better. That's the goal of philosophy, and by engaging in philosophy, that's what we try to achieve. For that purpose, I like to use the word soul. But when you say the word mind, it seems rather subjective. But I change myself. Change. That's my soul that's changed, and my soul is free. And individual souls can respect each other, and each has dignity on its own. So myself, you, him, others, we all of us, each one of us, live together on a completely equal basis. That's what we would like to achieve. And how can I best describe this? That's one aspect that I would like to reach through the concept of the soul. And you say ego or the mind, it's very difficult for them to achieve love. It's the soul and the soul that can create love or generate love and live together. But you can only describe that with the word soul. And I've written a book about dialogue. This is a book about the art of dialogue. And there are many books and topics about dialogue. But philosophically, dialogue is the encounter of different souls and exchanging dialogues with words. If not, the encounter in between people may only be a method to force some people to do something or to force understanding by others. But the concept of dialogue can exist when this dialogue is between souls. I'm only introducing you to the very beginning in the basics of philosophy. But philosophy is to think about concepts and try to think of the world. And through that, you change the way you view the world. Lastly, philosophy is fundamental thinking about nothing and the various other concepts. But philosophy, in fact, is critical thinking. And it likes to overturn previous thoughts. What we thought was a norm is challenged and broken. What we thought was reality is to be broken down. That's the strength of philosophy, and that is the objective of philosophy. Now what we thought was common sense in daily life is broken down as a result of philosophical thinking. That is why philosophers are considered outsiders, and we are not liked by society, and oftentimes philosophers are killed, like in the case of Socrates or Jesus Christ. He is a philosopher in the way Plato is as well. Why does this happen? Because what we are talking about are not the tricks to having a good life. People have very various thoughts, but we challenge those common sense norms. That is why people do not like what we say, because we are critical, but that is one of the very basics of philosophy. Plato came up with the word ideal. That we live in reality, but we are in pursuit of something new, different. And this is not just about the roughly 100 years that we live where we always keep eternity in mind as we think of what is ideal. We quest for the truth and universality in a more realistic or more concrete way within philosophy. But we do not always achieve this smoothly. We encounter walls, and then we do our best to overcome them. In other words, in philosophy, there's never an answer, and we have no concrete goal. But on the other hand, engaging in philosophy is interesting. I feel freedom. In engaging in philosophy, I have my physical body, and I live as of now from the eternal perspective, where I am very small and tiny. But a human being who can understand the smallness of being is very interesting. That's what Pascal said. Within eternity, the smallest existence of a human being can understand the finality of its being. That is why we can become infinite. And that's the practice of philosophy. I'm not sure if that was a good introduction of philosophy, but I've taken this opportunity to try to talk about what is philosophy. I'm looking forward to discussing whatever questions or comments you may have for me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.